A retired soldier spent 15 years on a ranch alone, until one night he faced many beautiful alien girls demanding shelter. 15 years had passed since Jacob laid down his armor and left the galaxy behind. 15 years since he had seen the faces of his comrades, or the blue of Earth's sky. Out here, there was only dust. And work. Endless, punishing work. He built a ranch with his hands, steel fences patched with scrap, a generator that coughed more than it hummed, crops that grew only because he bullied them into living. He was a soldier once, but now he was just a man scratching a life from soil that hated him. Jacob preferred it that way. He had fought in too many wars. He had buried too many brothers and sisters. Out here, no one needed him. Out here, he could disappear. Each day was the same. At dawn, he checked the solar panels. At midday, he hauled water from the deep well. At dusk, he walked the fences with his rifle, more out of habit than necessity. And at night, he ate in silence. There were no voices here, no laughter, no orders barked over comms, only the creak of old wood, the hiss of desert wind, and the soft hum of a lonely man's heartbeat. But the galaxy does not always respect silence. One evening, as the sun set in red fire across the horizon, Jacob heard a sound he had not heard in years. Engines. Faint at first, growing louder. He froze. His rifle was in his hands before his thoughts had caught up. The habit never died. Once a soldier, always a soldier. The dust on the horizon shifted. Shapes emerged. At first, Jacob thought it was raiders, scavengers who preyed on the forgotten edges of space. His jaw clenched. His finger rested on the trigger. But then the shapes resolved into figures, 11 of them, moving slowly, stumbling. Their outlines wrong for raiders, not armored, not armed. As they drew closer, Jacob saw faces. Women. Not human, though close enough to unsettle him. Their skin was pale, faintly violet. Their hair glinted silver in the fading light. Eyes glowed faintly blue, like embers struggling to stay alive. Their clothes were torn, dust-caked, patched with crude stitches. Hunger hollowed their cheeks. Exhaustion bent their backs. And yet, they walked with dignity. Jacob raised his rifle. His voice was low, hard, the same voice he used to bark orders across battlefields. Jacob. That's far enough. Narrator. The women stopped. They exchanged weary glances. One stepped forward, tall, bearing a scar across her jaw. She stood straighter than the rest, though her body trembled with fatigue. Her voice was halting, broken common tongue, but steady. Sarah. Human. Please. We beg. Shelter. Jacob. Not running a boarding house. Keep walking. Narrator. Another figure stumbled forward. Younger. Her steps were unsteady, her voice trembling, but her words carried steel. Laya. Our mates are gone. Our home is ash. Alone. We die. Jacob. Not my problem. Narrator. He meant it. He wanted it to be true. But Jacob Holt was a man forged in war, and he recognized the look in their eyes, the look of those who had already lost everything and were too stubborn to fall. It was the same look he saw in his reflection every morning. The scarred leader spoke again. Sarah, it will be your problem if we fall here. Let us rest. One night. Then we move on. Narrator. Jacob's grip on the rifle tightened. He cursed himself silently. He had sworn never again to be responsible for lives, never again to let people close. But, Jacob, one night, food, water, that's it. You're gone at first light. Narrator. Relief passed through the group like a wave. They bowed their heads slightly, murmuring in their own tongue, and with steps as cautious as prey, They followed Jacob through the gate of his lonely ranch. Inside, Jacob lit the fire. He gave them food from his stores: tough bread, dried meat, a jug of water. They ate without shame, but with the reverence of people who had not eaten well in days. Jacob sat apart, silent, but his soldiers' eyes never left them. And as the fire crackled, the silence finally broke. Mira, sharp-eyed and suspicious, stared across at him. Mira, you fought. Jacob, not anymore. Mira, I can see it. Scars, the way you sit, always facing the door, always watching. Once a soldier, always a soldier. Narrator, Jacob did not answer. His gaze stayed on the flames. The leader, Sarah, spoke softly, her voice heavy with grief. Sarah, our men died beside humans. On Garrus 9. They stood until nothing remained. We are their widows. We carry their memory. Narrator, an older one, Talia, added in a voice as gentle as worn cloth. Talia, we've been turned away from every world, called cursed. Bad luck. Narrator, Jacob's jaw clenched. His hand tightened around his cup. And then, with a voice like steel snapping, he cut them off. Jacob, don't mistake me for a savior. Eat. Sleep. You're gone at dawn. Narrator, but dawn was still far away, and the galaxy had other plans. Narrator, the 11 widows slept in a corner of Jacob's common room that night, gathered close like embers trying to hold one another's heat. He had given them blankets from the storage chest, old, frayed, but warmer than the desert air that cut sharp in the dark. Jacob sat apart by the fire, his back against the wall, rifle across his knees. He told himself he stayed awake out of habit, that he didn't trust them, that he was only waiting for morning when he could send them back into the dust. But deep down, he knew it was more. Soldiers didn't sleep easily, not when strangers breathed under the same roof. The flames cracked. The desert wind moaned against the shutters. And in that uneasy silence, a voice rose. It was Mira, the one with sharp eyes, who had studied Jacob like he was a puzzle she didn't trust. Mira, you've killed before. Narrator, Jacob's jaw tightened, but he did not answer. Mira, don't bother denying it. I see it in your hands. You grip that rifle like it's an extension of your arm. You sit where you can watch every exit. You count threats even when you're pretending not to. Jacob, and what of it? Mira, it means you are not just a farmer. It means you've lived the same kind of life we did, one where death was always close. Narrator, Jacob's eyes stayed on the fire. He wanted silence, but silence never lasted long when ghosts gathered. Sarah, their leader, lifted her head. Her scar caught the firelight. Sarah, our husbands fought beside yours, on Garrus 9. We remember. The last human units held the ridge for 6 days. 6 days, against machines that never tired. Your kind bled with ours until the ground itself was red. Narrator, her voice did not tremble, but grief bent her shoulders like an invisible weight. Sarah, our men fell there, one by one. We buried them beneath glass and fire. When the war ended, there was no home left to return to, only ash. Narrator, the older widow, Talia, spoke next. Her voice was like worn fabric, soft, tired, yet strong enough to carry the truth. Talia, we wandered after that, from world to world, always told we were cursed, that widows bring bad luck, that we reminded others too much of what they'd lost. Doors closed in our faces, until there were no doors left. Narrator, Jacob felt the words like a knife pressed against old scars. He had buried his own squad once, men and women who had trusted him, laughed with him, bled for him. He had walked away not because he wanted to, but because he could no longer carry the weight of their voices in his dreams. And yet, here they were again. voices carrying grief that sounded too much like his own. He slammed his cup down, sparks flying in the fire. His words came out like gunfire. "Jacob, I told you before, don't mistake me for a savior. You eat, you sleep. You're gone at dawn. That's the deal." Narrator. The fire snapped in the silence that followed. Some of the widows lowered their eyes, but not Sarah. She stared at Jacob across the flames, her gaze unwavering. "Sarah, we did not ask for a savior. We asked for shelter. One night of mercy. That is all." Narrator. Jacob looked away first. He hated himself for it. He hated the way her words twisted his chest, the way her eyes reminded him of soldiers who once looked to him for strength. Hours passed. The fire burned low. Slowly, one by one, the widows drifted into sleep. Their breathing softened. Their bodies curled together against the cold. But Jacob stayed awake. His rifle stayed across his knees. His eyes stayed on the door, because mercy was dangerous, and he had given enough of it already in his lifetime. Narrator. Morning came with the harsh light of a desert sun, beating down on metal and bone alike. Jacob stepped outside to check the fences. The widows followed, not ordered, not invited, but simply because they refused to sit idle. They moved with purpose. Sarah inspected the water pumps with the eyes of someone who knew machinery. Mira knelt at the irrigation lines, muttering under her breath about wasted flow. Talia guided the younger ones in clearing weeds from the crops. Jacob watched, arms folded. He told himself it was annoyance, that he didn't need help. But the truth gnawed at him. They weren't helpless. They weren't burdens. They were survivors, like him. When he tried to push them away, they only worked harder. Jacob. You don't have to do that. Sarah. Neither do you. Yet, here we are. Narrator. Jacob bit back his reply. For a moment, he almost smiled. Almost. But his silence said enough. By midday, the ranch looked more alive than it had in months. The fences stood straighter. The crops looked greener. Even the air seemed lighter with the sound of voices that had not been here in years. But Jacob did not trust peace. Peace was only the moment before the shooting started. And as the sun dipped low once again, he felt it in his bones. Something was coming. He was right. Because that night, the alarms screamed. Narrator. The desert night was silent, until it wasn't. Jacob was on his feet before the alarm finished its first wail. The old perimeter sensors, half rusted, patched a dozen times over, still did their job. Something was moving beyond the fence. He grabbed his rifle, every motion drilled into muscle memory. The widows stirred, their murmurs sharp with fear. Laya. What is it? Jacob. Trouble. Stay inside. Narrator. But Sarah was already rising, her eyes narrowing, jaw tight. She walked to the door, silver hair catching the glow of the emergency lamp. Sarah. Raiders. I've seen this before. They come when they smell weakness. Jacob. Then they picked the wrong damn ranch. Narrator. He stepped outside into the dark. The desert wind whipped against his face, carrying the stench of burning oil. Shapes moved at the horizon, black against the faint starlight. Hoverbikes, patched armor, weapons flashing dull red. Half a dozen. No, more. A dozen riders at least, hungry, desperate men. Jacob spat into the dust. Jacob. Figures. Narrator. The widows gathered at the doorway despite his orders. Mira hissed between her teeth. Mira. Scavenger scum. They took from us before. They'll take again. Narrator. Jacob checked his rifle. Old but well kept. He racked the bolt, feeling the weapon come alive in his hands. It was an old friend, one of the few he had left. Jacob. Stay inside. Don't argue. If I fall, you run. Narrator. But Sarah stepped forward, her voice like steel. Sarah, we are not cattle to be herded. We will not hide. Jacob, this isn't your fight. Sarah, everything is our fight, or have you forgotten? Narrator. For a long moment, Jacob stared at her. Her eyes were hard, filled with the same fire he had once seen in soldiers on the line. He growled low in his throat. Jacob, fine. You do what I say when I say it, or you'll be dead before the sun rises. Narrator. The raiders drew closer, their bikes kicking up sand and fire. One shouted across the dark, his voice carried by an amplifier. Raider leader. Old man, nice farm you got. Looks like you've got company too. Hand 'em over and maybe we let you live. Jacob, shouting back. You want my land, my food, my guests? Come and take 'em. Narrator. The raiders laughed, a cruel chorus. Engines roared as they charged. Jacob raised his rifle, and the ranch erupted into war. Narrator. The first shot cracked like thunder. A raider pitched off his bike, body tumbling lifeless into the dust. The widows flinched at the sound, but Jacob didn't hesitate. His rifle barked again. Another fell. Mira grabbed a broken pipe from near the fence, swinging it into the path of a raider who tried to climb over. His scream split the night as he fell backward. Laya threw stones at fuel lines, sparks catching where they struck. Fire bloomed, painting the desert red. Sarah fought like she had been born for it. She seized a fallen raider's blade and stood beside Jacob, slashing at any who got close. Jacob himself moved with brutal efficiency. Where the raiders fired wild, he aimed true. Where they rushed, he countered. His movements were not graceful. They were relentless, unyielding. A machine built for war, awakened after too long a sleep. Bullets tore through steel. Fire spread across the fences. The air filled with smoke and screams. Narrator. At one point, 3 raiders broke through at once, swarming toward the women. Jacob didn't think. He roared. A raw, inhuman sound. It froze them for half a heartbeat. Long enough for him to drive the butt of his rifle into one skull, drop another with a knife drawn from his boot, and slam the third into the dirt with a strength that defied his years. The widows stared, wide-eyed. For the first time, they saw what Jacob Holt truly was. Not just a man, not just a soldier, a human, a creature so stubborn, so savage, that the galaxy had learned to call his kind monsters. Space orcs. Too strong to kill, too relentless to break. Narrator. The raiders faltered. Fear rippled through their ranks. They had come expecting prey, not predators. Their leader snarled, raising a plasma rifle. He fired. The shot seared across Jacob's shoulder, burning flesh. Jacob staggered, but did not fall. Instead, he grinned, a bloody, terrible grin. Jacob, you're gonna wish you never stepped foot on my dirt. Narrator. With a roar, he charged. The fight became a blur of smoke and fire, Jacob tearing through raiders with a ferocity that seemed impossible. The widows fighting beside him, each one refusing to bend. Minutes felt like hours, but slowly the screams faded. The engines sputtered. The dust settled. And when the night grew quiet again, the raiders lay broken across the desert. Not one had survived. Narrator. Jacob stood in the wreckage, chest heaving, blood running down his arm. The widows stared at him, eyes wide not with fear, but with awe. Laya whispered, her voice trembling. Laya, now I understand why they call you space orcs. Narrator. Jacob spat into the dirt, wincing as he pressed a hand to his wound. Jacob. Call me whatever the hell you want. Just know this. No one takes my home. Narrator. The widows exchanged glances, and for the first time in years, Jacob saw something in their faces that he thought he'd never see again. Hope.
Narrator. Dawn rose over the desert, pale and unforgiving. Smoke curled from the broken bikes, littering the sand. The air stank of blood, oil, and fire. Jacob stood at the edge of his land, arm bound in rough bandages. His shoulder burned, but he ignored it. Pain was an old companion. Behind him, the widows gathered among the wreckage. They moved silently, stripping the raiders' gear, salvaging what could be used. Not one of them wept. Not one of them faltered. They had buried too much already. Narrator. Sarah approached, her scarred face streaked with ash. She stopped at Jacob's side. Sarah, we should burn the rest. The desert will take the bones, but not the machines. Jacob, do it. Strip the fuel. Take the steel. Waste nothing. Narrator. Her eyes lingered on him, sharp and searching. Sarah, you fought like 10 men last night. Jacob. Flatly, I fought like I always have. Sarah, and yet you still live when so many did not. Narrator. Jacob said nothing. His gaze stayed fixed on the horizon. The desert stretched endlessly and silently, but he knew peace never lasted. Narrator. Later, as the sun climbed, the widows worked the land. They patched fences with scavenged plating, cleared ash from the fields, and reinforced the gates with salvaged steel. Jacob watched, arms folded jaw tight. He wanted to tell them to leave, to remind them this was his ranch, his exile, his silence. But every time the words rose, he swallowed them, because the truth was clear. The ranch had not looked this alive in years. Narrator. At midday, Mira cornered him. Her eyes are still sharp, but softer now. Mira, you don't want us here. I see it. But look at your land. Alone it rots. With us it breathes again. Jacob, this isn't your home. Mira, it wasn't yours either. Not until you made it. Narrator. The words hit harder than Jacob liked. He turned away, grumbling low, but Myra's smirk told him she knew she'd struck true. Narrator. That night, they gathered around the fire again. For the first time, it wasn't silent. Lyle laughed, a soft, awkward sound, as she shared how she'd scared a raider by throwing rocks at his face. Talia hummed an old song under her breath, one the others slowly joined. Even Mira told a story, bitter, but edged with a kind of sharp humor. The fire crackled, voices rising into the dark, and Jacob found himself listening. Not speaking, not joining, but listening. It felt almost like the old days. Narrator. Sarah spoke last, her voice calm but heavy. Sarah, we were cast out because we reminded them of death. But here, on this ranch, we have found life again. You can drive us away tomorrow, Jacob Holt. But know this, we will not be broken. Not by raiders. Not by hunger. Not by silence. Narrator. The others nodded. Their eyes glowed in the firelight, bright with something Jacob thought he'd never see again. Hope. Jacob stared into the flames. His hand tightened around his cup. He wanted to shout, to curse, to drive them away before they rooted too deep into his life. But instead, his voice came out low, almost gentle. Jacob, if you're staying, you work. No dead weight. Narrator. The widows exchanged glances. Relief spread through them like warmth from the fire. Mira, work is all we know. So, then it is decided.
Narrator, closing, original ending. This is what it means to be human, to be called monster, orc, savage, and to wear those names as armor, to stand when standing seems impossible, to fight when surrender would be easier, to choose life even in the ashes of war, because humanity does not bow, not to raiders, not to silence, not to the void itself. Humanity endures. Narrator extended foreshadowing. But beyond the desert, beyond this small ranch clinging to survival, the stars were shifting. Whispers traveled through the trade routes, whispers of fleets stirring in the dark. Old enemies regrouping, old wounds reopening. The galaxy had not forgotten the wars of humanity. It had not forgiven either. And in the quiet of the night, as the widows finally slept, Jacob Holt stood alone at the gate. His rifle slung across his back, his wounded shoulder aching. He stared at the horizon where the desert met the stars. Something in his bones told him the raiders were just the first shadow. Jacob, low to himself. They'll come again. Bigger. Meaner. Narrator. His hand brushed the wood of the gate, then clenched into a fist. Jacob, let them. Narrator. because this ranch was no longer just his. It was theirs. And if the galaxy came knocking, it wouldn't find a broken man anymore. It would find humanity, and humanity would be ready